Greetings to you all.
Class 10, Unit 2, Zigzag, written by Asha Nemaya. Supplementary reading. The family that shelters a new pet is totally taken up by the commotions it creates at home. Dr. Ashok T. Krishnan's clinic usually sounded more like an ancient Chinese torture chamber than a child specialist's clinic. This was because the tiny children who were his patients left out a variety of blood-curdling yells and ear-splitting sobs. It is all because my patients were making so much noise and crying so loudly. He apologized to his wife one evening that Somu couldn't hear me properly. He rang me in the clinic to ask whether we could keep Zigzag with us when he leaves for Alaska. And now Somu thinks I said yes, even though I clearly said no. I know you are busy getting your painting ready for your exhibition next week. Zigzag interrupted their 9-year-old daughter Maya. Isn't it that Uncle Somu's prized giant green and gold fighting beetle? The one that spits deadly poison straight into its opponent's eye? No, corrected her elder brother, Arvind, eyes shining in pure delight. The beetle is called Spitfire. Zigzag must be Uncle Somu's pet snake, the African sidewinder. You know, the one that slithers zigzag all over his house. You're both quite mistaken, their father hastened to explain, seeing his wife's horrified expression. Zigzag is a most harmless, unusual, and lovable bird. Apparently, it was bred by a genuine African witch doctor who gifted it to Somu when he, being a child specialist like me, cured the witch doctor's son while he was touring the deepest jungles of equatorial Africa last month. Somu says, the bird is an absolute treasure and a real help. It is his favorite pet, you know. Somu might be your best friend, but most of these so-called favorite possessions that he has given us were absolute nuisances, countered Mrs. Krishnan angrily. A talented artist, she applied a dab of yellow orchid paint onto her painting titled Sunset at Marina, paused for a moment to survey the effect, and then continued. Remember the rare insect-eating plant he brought back from the wettest corner of the Amazonian rainforest. He insisted that we keep it because it would eat the mosquitoes in the house, and now that wretched plant requires a room heater to keep it alive in Chennai. Ma, protested Arvind, that's not really true. Uncle Somu's given us some really fabulous gifts. Right. Remember the tiny penknife he gave me last year? The one with the genuine shark's tooth blade. That has been really useful. Maya joined the protest. No one but you, Maya, Mrs. Krishnan told her daughter sternly, would describe a penknife that has cut open the pockets of 3 skirts and 2 pairs of jeans as really useful? And what about the aboriginal boomerang Uncle Somu brought us all the way from Australia? Demanded Arvind. You can't deny that it was a great hit with everyone. Great hit indeed. Mrs. Krishnan didn't bother to hide her sarcasm and continued. Considering that the boomerang sliced through all the TV aerials in the neighborhood, caused permanent damage to several cars in the parking lot, and knocked out our watchman cold with the force you threw it. But Zigzag is different. Somu says, we are sure to love Zigzag, soothed Dr. Krishnan, because the bird can talk and sing in about 21 different languages, mostly African languages. Of course, when it sings, it moves the listeners to tears. It's Somu's thoughtless ways that reduce me to tears. Mrs. Krishnan said irritably, what a time to dump this multilingual talking singing bird on us. Here I am tied up in knots trying to get my paintings together for the exhibition next week. May I take Zigzag to school, Papa? Arvind, as always, was planning ahead. I want to display him in this. When is Zigzag coming, Papa? Maya was jumping up and down, all excited. Uncle Somu said he would send Zigzag with his old cook, Vishu. Sometime today. I will have to leave for my clinic now. There, he added as the doorbell rang. That's probably them. And indeed it was. Come in, Zigzag. Come in, dear, quasked Vishu. And in tottered the strangest, weirdest looking bird the Krishnan's family had ever seen. About 1.5 feet tall, its bald head was fringed with a crown of shocking pink feathers, while the rest of its plumage was in various shades of the muddiest, sludgiest brown. Its curved beak was sunflower yellow, and its eyes were the color of cola held to sunlight. This is Zigzag, announced Vishu with a flourish. His full name is Ziggy Zaga, King of the Tonga. How am I going to miss him? So beautifully he talks. He can even recite French poetry. The object of all this praise was standing cool and unmoved, with an expression of almost human grumpiness in his cola-colored eyes. Arvind, finding that Zigzag was sulkily refusing to say a word despite all their efforts at striking a conversation, dashed into the kitchen to return with a plate heaped hurriedly with juicy fruit, slices, and some nuts. Bored eyes brightened momentarily as Zigzag picked up a walnut, but refusing to speak, he dropped one wrinkled eyelid in a solemn wink and flew clumsily to deposit the nut on the enormous chandelier hanging from the ceiling. Bit by bit, and in total silence, all the fruit on the plate was transferred to the chandelier and on to the blades of the ceiling fan, now switched off. Then, perching comfortably on a curtain rod, Zigzag dropped one wizened eyelid in another solemn wink as he sank his beaks into a plump guava. Don't worry, children, Vishu comforted as he left. Noticing how disappointed they looked when Zigzag stubbornly refused to say a single word to them, even though they tried speaking to him in English, Hindi, Tamil, and French. Just wait till Zigzag settles down in his new home. Then you can have a great time listening to him. As it happened, the children didn't have to wait more than 10 minutes to have a great time listening to Zigzag. For as soon as Vishu left, Zigzag, still perched on the curtain rod, went off to sleep, and the moment he fell asleep, he began to snore. And what a snore it was! It began as a soft, grumbly sort of rubble, much like that which is the stomach of a mildly hungry dinosaur might have made. Then it grew louder and louder and louder until it sounded as if a herd of elephants with cold was trumpeting angrily in the room. Zigzag snore pounded their eardrums till their heads ached. In vain did they try to wake the snoring bird. 21 languages he's supposed to know, snorted Mrs. Krishnan. Yet this bird chooses to communicate only in snorish, snores, snorian, snorihili, sonarlu. I thought it was scientific fact that birds couldn't snore, said Maya, trying to squirt water from a small water pistol at Zigzag to wake him and wetting most of the curtains, the walls, and a sofa instead. African witch doctors' birds don't obey scientific rules. Arvind was annoyed that his best imitations of a raging lion, a hungry hyena, and a ferocious dog had failed to draw Zigzag out of his deep slumber. Now he tried his loudest, most frightening coyote call, but Zigzag slept on undisturbed as ant snored on. In total despair at their failure to wake Zigzag, or at least stop him snoring, they shut themselves in the bedroom that was furthest away from Mrs. Krishnan's studio, where Zigzag was creating the terrible din. Mrs. Krishnan was just unraveling a roll of cotton wool to stuff it in her ears when they heard her maid Lakshmi shrieking as if she had been electrocuted. Hearts hammering, they rushed to the studio to find Lakshmi dancing and clapping her hands excitedly as she yelled, "We have been blessed! We have been truly blessed! It is raining papayas and bananas in this room!" They froze in horror. Lakshmi had apparently switched on the fan on which Zigzag had left. Some fruits and nuts, half-picked fruit, streamed off the fan, dampening even Lakshmi's enthusiasm as a guava landed on her cheek with a soft squish and one walnut hit her forehead with a loud smack. One slice of overripe papaya came wishing off the fan, and As they watched it helplessly, horror splattered all over Mrs. Krishnan's unfinished masterpiece, Sunset at Marina, spreading streaks of gooey orange pulp and shiny black seeds all over it. Mrs. Krishnan groaned tragically and looked ready to shoot Zigzag, but he was saved by the bell, the telephone bell. They answered one call after another as all the neighbors rang up to demand what the awful sound was, and if they could please have some peace. And through all this commotion, Zigzag slept on unconcerned and snored on. Finally, an exhausted Mrs. Krishnan rang up her husband. "I'm going crazy," with the sound of Zigzag snoring, plus all these angry telephone calls, and my beautiful painting. Here, her voice cracked. Mrs. Junjunwala, the art critic who lives upstairs, she heard Zigzag snoring and had the cheek to telephone and ask me whether I could sing a little softly when I took my singing lessons. Please contact Somu and find out what we should do. Dr. Krishnan came home as fast as he could after he had left an email message for Somu, asking him for clear instructions on how to stop Zigzag from snoring. "Don't worry," he reassured his downcast family. "Somu will reply soon, and we will discover there is some ridiculously simple way to stop Zigzag from snoring." 6 days passed. 6 frantic days of checking their email day and night. 6 torturous days of having the deafening loud resound in their home. Most nerve-wrackingly, Maya complained that she heard a permanent rumbling sound in her ears even when she was miles away from home, and that her ears ached all the time. Arvind confessed that for the first time in his life, he was actually looking forward to going to school, considering it was as calm as a monastery compared to their house. Mrs. Krishnan had lost interest in painting. Zigzag would sometimes wake up briefly when he wanted to eat some fruit, and sometimes he would sit on the veranda, looking sulky and bored as he stared at the sunset at Marina Beach. The real view, not the painting lying forlorn in one corner, ruined by streaks of hardening papaya. Zigzag never spoke to anyone, though everyone tried several times and in several languages to speak to him kindly. He only slept and snored. On the 7th day, Dr. Somu's email arrived. It was as Dr. Krishnan predicted, ridiculously simple. It read, "I have never heard Zigzag snore. In fact, Zigzag hardly ever sleeps. Love, Somu. Please, if you are finding it difficult, ask my cook Vishu to keep Zigzag." "That does it," said Mrs. Krishnan. "Fine, Vishu. I will not keep Zigzag here another minute." "Calm down, dear. I am leaving for my clinic now." "Can't it wait till?" "No, it's now." Mrs. Krishnan was adamant. "I have invited some friends and our experts to come home and choose my paintings for the exhibition. This feathered, snoring monster will drive us all mad. Come on then. Zigzag, called Dr. Krishna nervously, wondering how he would locate Somu's cook Vishu. Why don't you wait in the car? Zigzag, he suggested. When they reached his clinic, his heart sinking at the thought of Zigzag's ear-shattering loud snore, adding to the din of the sobs and shrieks produced by the tiny patients waiting for him. But Ziggy Zaga, king of the Tonga, was not accustomed to being kept waiting and was already making his way to the clinic where he perched himself reception table. Don't you dare sleep? Dr. Krishnan warned Zigzag fiercely as he went towards his room. He had hardly walked through the swinging half door that separated his clinic from the waiting room when he heard a strange voice say, "You there, in the blue t-shirt, don't jump on the sofa. And you in the red dress, don't swing on the curtain." It was Zigzag's voice, clear and commanding. There was pin-drop silence in the room as everyone waited, open-mouthed, for Zigzag's next sentence. Dr. Krishnan was amazed. Gone was Zigzag's bored and grumpy expression. Instead, the bird looked happy and alert as it went about the job it had been trained for, first with the African witch doctor and then with Dr. Somu. Dr. Krishnan's clinic, usually a noisy sea of tears and tantrums, was transformed into a calm, orderly place as Zigzag efficiently soothed the frightened patients, scolded the naughty ones, and made the crying ones smile. And if his yam-digging song and recitation of French poetry reduced the children to helpless laughter instead of tears, he didn't look as though he minded. And best of all, Zigzag never slept or snored, even for a second. Never had a morning passed so quietly and peacefully for Dr. Krishnan. When the last patient had left, he called Zigzag to his room. Zigzag flew in and sat on the table, scratching the bird under its beak. Dr. Krishnan sighed and said, "Somu was right. After all, you are an absolute treasure. I never realized what he meant when he called you a great help. Why didn't you tell me you would prefer to be at my clinic instead of snoring like that to show you were bored? What do we do now? No one wants you back at home now. They want me to leave you with Vishu." Just then, the telephone rang. It was Mrs. Krishnan, sounding very pleased with herself. "Mrs. Junjunwala and the art critic," she chuckled. "She doesn't want me to exhibit Sunset at Marina. She has brought it for herself, 5,000 rupees. Isn't it that the painting the papayas fell on?" Yes, Mrs. Krishnan was laughing heartily now. I had left it in one corner and she chose to buy it, saying she loved my new technique of painting. She simply adored those streaky orangey bits. She launched into fresh gales of laughter. "By the way," she said when she sobered down, "I don't think we were fair to Zigzag. Shall we keep him with us at home? Just on trial for another week?" "Sure," agreed a delighted Dr. Krishnan, before he cleverly added, and I could always take him to the clinic every morning so that you can paint in peace at home, my boy, he confided to Zigzag after matters were satisfactorily settled, giving the bird a toffee from his desk. You have your own strange way of showing your genius, a zigzag way, I would call it. Wouldn't you? But Ziggy Zaga, king of the Tonga, brought up on compliments as he was, didn't bother to reply. He just ate the toffee, paper wrapper and all, and then lowered one crinkly eyelid in a knowing wink. Now let us see about the author. Asha Nemhia was born in 1958 at Chennai, has lived, studied and worked in 8 different cities and small towns, and is now a resident of Bangalore. She has always been interested in writing. Her love for reading led her to study literature in college. If she had not been a writer, she would have been a teacher. Humor, fantasy, mystery, and adventure are the strong elements in her work. She loves baking, walking, reading, and traveling. Thank you. Hearty thanks to all the subscribers and viewers.